Hello, everybody, and welcome to our partner showcase, Digitalize Your Braille Writer, introducing Paige Connect. As you guys are making your way in, there will be a poll for you guys to go ahead and tell us a little bit about you so that our presenters today can get an idea of who is joining us. The first question is, what is your job title? And there's a slew of answers. Where are you from? And of course, how did you hear about this webinar? And just while you guys are taking those poll questions, I'll go ahead and go over some of the ground rules for this webinar. So our ground rules for the webinar are we would like you to type your questions into the chat, and either our presenters will go over those answers as they come in or at the end of the webinar, whatever they are most comfortable with. This webinar does not have any ACV REP credits available, and there will be closed captioning available for this webinar. I'm going to go ahead and close out the poll in just a second. And then we actually have something really fun for you guys to participate in for the next thing that we're going to do before we introduce our presenters. So let's go over some of the results so you guys know who's joining you in this webinar today. So what is your job title? We have about 68% of people who are teachers of students with visual impairments. We, of course, have some early intervention teachers. We have 21% orientation and mobility specialists, some vision rehabilitation specialists. Of course, assistive technology specialists take up 13%, and we have some college faculty or state administration, along with a slew of people who are also in the other category. As far as where they're joining us from, of course, we have people who are joining us from the Northeast of the US, about 11%, 28% are from the Southwest. We have 19% from the Northwest, 11% from the Southwest, and we have a large population coming from the Midwest. And of course, we do have some participation from Canada, Australia, or New Zealand, and some other countries. And of course, most of you heard about this webinar through an email from APH. So thank you for joining us today. We are so excited to have you. And just before we introduce our presenters, we have just an informational poll for them to know a little bit about how familiar you are with Paige Connect. So if you guys could just take a second and take that over the results with our presenters, and they will go ahead and introduce themselves. Alrighty, I'm going to go ahead and close out that poll. So it looks like the question is, how familiar are you with Paige Connect? And the answers were never met. I need introductions. I've waved from across the classroom once. It's on its way, waiting for it in the mailbox. And of course, we're two peas in a pod. And we have about 80% of people who said that they have never met and they need an introduction. So this is a great time to get to know Paige Connect. And of course, we have about 8% who says that they have waved from across the classroom once. We have 2% who say that it is on the way and just waiting for it in the mailbox. And of course, we have about 10% that say that they're two peas in a pod. So hopefully you can learn a little bit more through our webinar today. And I am Amanda Dennis. I'm just your moderator for the webinar here and there in a sense, but I'm not really your star of the show today. So I'm going to pass it off to the real stars of our show, to Melissa Matthews and Sarah Welch, who will do introductions of themselves and get on with this webinar.
Hello, and thank you, Amanda. I would say Paige is the star of the show, but my name is Sarah Welch. I'm one of the Braille technology product managers here at APH, and I'm super excited to have with me
Melissa Matthews. I'm Melissa Matthews, and I am very excited to share all sorts of knowledge and useful information regarding Paige Connect. And we are very excited to have Greg with us as well. He is a founder of Paige Braille. And Greg, if you would introduce yourself.
Hi, so I'm one of the founders of Paige Braille, which is the company behind Paige Connect.
Awesome. Greg, do you want to share a little bit about how Paige Braille came to be, or how you got to Paige Connect?
Sure, can do. So we're a small team of engineers and we all met at university. So originally it started out as like a university project where we got given the brief from a charity. And so we ended up meeting loads of TVIs and students and getting more and more invested in the space. And then around sort of 2022, we made a prototype for Paige Connect and we showed it to some TVIs in the UK and they went kind of nuts for it and immediately wanted to buy it. Then we spent the next year trying to mature it into a product that we could actually ship. And we've now done so in like the UK and the US.
We are so excited about Paige Connect. So Paige Connect, as Greg shared, is an amazing product, and just some basic information. The cost of it is $339 and it is available on quota funds. Sarah's going to share a little bit more through her document camera about the guts and the inside of the Paige Connect. So the Paige Connect has a 9 U-shaped optical sensors. It does require a USB-A cord to plug in, and it does fit on the bottom of a traditional Braille writer, and there's a hole for the cord, and it replaces the bottom, and the board is incredibly durable and it connects via Bluetooth. So we'll let Sarah show you the guts or the inside of the Paige Connect.
Hello again. This is Sarah. If you want to stop sharing for a moment, Melissa, so we can pin my video. So while we're getting that going, I do want to please state, like, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them as soon as they come up to you. I will be monitoring the chat and we'll try to answer as many as promptly as we can. But any question you have, we're more than happy. We want to kind of let you know what information that you're interested in. So I currently have my document camera up that is showing the Paige Connect. Oh, I see Elizabeth asking, is there an opening code? So for this, there is not. There is not ACV REP credit, but coming up, there is actually another webinar. I'm forgetting the exact date, Melissa, but there will be one for ACV REP credit. So if we're looking at the board of the Paige Connect, so it's a very rigid material. It almost feels like a metal, but it's not. It's a composite. Currently, the view facing the camera is the internals of the Paige Connect. So this would be the side that is facing your Braille writer. So what you would do is you would take the bottom off your traditional Braille writer, you would unscrew it, and then this would be screwed in as your new bottom of the Paige Connect. And this would be what the flat side bottom will look like. So it's mostly all one piece with a couple of ridges cut out to fit the shape of the bottom of the Paige Connect. And there's one rectangular piece that just sticks out slightly from the rest that covers the back of the sensors. But this will all be under the lip of the Paige Connect. So it'll still be flat. It'll work like normal. The only thing that will be different once this is installed is you will have this one cord coming out that's a USB-A. And this is how you power the Paige Connect. So looking again at the internals of the Paige Connect. So the part that's closest towards the back of the Paige Connect is a small round hole, which is where USB-A would come through, and that's where the power is connected to the internal part of the board. Then you have 9 U-shaped black optical sensors going across. So there's one corresponding to each of the keys on your traditional Braille writer. And what happens is when you press that key down, then it will go in between the two sides of the optical sensor. And that's what sets it off and gives you your digital output. So essentially, with this installed, you connect via Bluetooth to either your smartphone or computer or laptop. And this is giving like digital output to your Braille writer. So it's kind of, you can think of it like a Bluetooth keyboard at that point. So that's kind of the rough, quick, and dirty of what is the Paige Connect on a basic level. Another thing to note is, like, once this is installed, you probably would just keep this as your full back for the Paige Connect, but you would want to uninstall it for repairs or that sort of thing.
So Sarah, there were a couple questions. One question, which I think you covered, was the USB-A connection, but Bluetooth. Can you expand on that? And I think you did a great job of how that would, but is there anything else that you want to mention?
So yeah, so just to clarify, so yeah, your power is through the USB-A, and so that could go into, you know, anything that you can get power from. So you could have it plugged into your computer, you could have it plugged into, you know, a power brick. That is power only, so there's no data going through that. Your data is through that Bluetooth connection. But
Great.
that's a good clarification to make there.
Absolutely. And another question, which I think you covered, but I'll give you another opportunity. Do you have to make other attachments to the Brailler besides screwing the Paige Connect to the bottom of it? If not, how does it detect what is being brailled? Excuse me.
So yeah, so there is no other attachments at that point. It is good to clarify. We got this question recently. We've tested this with a lot of different versions of traditional Braille writers. The Unimanual, which Greg can talk a little bit more on the technical side of this, is not compatible with this because for your traditional Braille writer, these optical U-shaped sensors, like I said before, when you're pressing keys down, the lever goes in between. The Unimanual, physically, the keys do not come down as far, so it can't be read by the optical sensors.
And that makes complete sense. Another question is, what type of device does the Paige Connect Bluetooth pair with?
So on the other end, that can be pretty much any smart device. And we might want to show our video here in a moment that might answer some questions of actually the installation of it. So that could be your basically any device that can connect to Bluetooth and the internet, you can connect with it. So it could be your smartphone, and that could be, you know, Android or iOS. It could be computer, laptop, tablet, Chromebook. It's pretty flexible.
And one other question before we show the videos and keep going. I think there's another question that might be answered a little bit later. Does it fit in Jumbo Brailler?
Now, that might be more of a Greg question. I don't remember off the top of my head if we've tested that one or not. And if we haven't, we can for sure. So let's go ahead and show the oh, sorry, go ahead, Greg.
I was just going to say that's definitely one we can check. And the Unimanual should work not in Unimanual mode, if that makes sense. So yeah.
But then kind of what's the point of it if it's not in Unimanual mode? But yes. So let's show that video. That might answer some questions, and then we'll answer some more questions that come in after that.
Absolutely.
And the video we're about to show you is also on Paige's website as well. So this is not a one-time only thing.
This video will walk you through setting up your Paige Connect. Start by turning your Braille writer upside down to access the underneath. With a crosshead screwdriver, remove the 11 screws holding the baseboard in place. Make sure you keep these in a safe place and don't lose any. Swap the old baseboard with your new Paige Connect so the sensors are inside. You can now screw the 11 screws back in place, but don't tighten them just yet. With your Braille writer still upside down, hold down the spacebar and adjust the position of your Paige Connect left and right so the spacebar can lower fully. Once you're happy with the position, you can tighten the 11 screws to hold the board in place. You can now place your Braille writer the right way up and check that all 9 keys can be fully lowered. If any of the keys do not lower fully, please return to the previous step and adjust the position of your Paige Connect left and right. Plug in the USB to power the board. You can use a mains adapter, laptop, or battery pack. Your Paige Connect should now appear as a Bluetooth keyboard on your phone, tablet, or laptop. You're now ready to start using your Paige Connect for instant Braille translation and gamified learning. Watch our software video to learn more. For more support, head to Paige.
That was just a real quick video of how to install. Go ahead, Melissa.
This next video does a great job of giving an introduction of the software that is available. And I have a feeling...
After setting up Paige Connect in the previous video, you're ready.
Apologize. Hold on.
So pause for a minute, and well, you can get that going in the background. We had a question, a couple other ones I will answer later, but one was about, could we repeat the part about pressing down the space key for what reason? So that is troubleshooting. Sometimes before you completely screw in all the way, you might need to wiggle from side to side the board so that the levers are lined up in the middle of the optical U-shaped sensors. There's directions and videos of how to do that on the website, but essentially you would hold down the one key and then wiggle it from side to side to make sure you have a good fit.
Was there another question, Sarah? I can't see the chat, so I just didn't know if you
There's
were
one question I think is going to be answered when we get to this next section. Do you have it up?
I do. If I could get it over. There we go.
After setting up Paige Connect in the previous video, you're ready to start translating and learning Braille. Head to our website at pagebraille.com and click on the Translate tab. Select your Braille code from the drop-down menu and make sure you've selected the input area. You're now ready to start embossing on your Braille writer. The translation will be displayed, making it easier to work with sighted teachers, family, and friends who don't know Braille. Your screen reader will also speak each word as you emboss, giving you instant feedback. Once you've finished, you can copy the translation or download it as a document. If you want to learn or practice Braille, head to the Learn tab. Get started with our rookie activities, which teach you the alphabet, numbers, and basic punctuation. Make sure your screen reader is turned on so you can hear the instructions. We'll start with Write activities. These will teach you the keys to press on your Braille writer for each letter, so you can begin writing Braille. Next, we have Read activities, where you copy the Braille you wrote to practice reading by touch. Finally, in Review activities, you can use the letters you've learned to form words. Remember, even learning a little Braille can make a big difference. It can lead to activities like labeling personal items around the house and reading Braille signs when you're out and about. Now that you've started reading and writing in Braille, it's important to practice little and often to learn and improve. To save your progress, you can create an account and celebrate your learning milestones. For more support, head to pagebraille.com/support.
So all of that was shown is from the Paige Braille website. Again, that's Paige. And that is a companion website. It's completely free. Anyone can make an account for that. And it's where a lot of the lessons are housed, and it was designed to work specifically in conjunction with Paige Connect. And it's also ran by Greg, which, Greg, you got a great comment on your accent. Unfortunately, I cannot have an accent, but maybe we'll get Greg to talk some more. So that is kind of an important distinction to make. Paige Connect does also work with other programs as long as they support 6-key entry, but the Paige Braille website is the one that was designed specifically to be used with Paige Connect. If you're not familiar with 6-key entry, that would be on your home row, the keys SDF-JKL. So if the program supports inputting Braille using those 6 keys, you can use the Paige Connect with it.
Wonderful. So we're going to dive into a little bit more of each of the sections for Paige Braille. I can slide that over there. So on the Learn page, what you'll notice is there on the right-hand side is a space for you to hit musical notes to turn that music piece on, as well as for it to provide audio speech feedback. What I truly love is the ability to go back and review Braille that I have needing to review, but as well as keeping track. So I do have an account. It goes through Rookie and then Explorer, which is word signs and strong contractions, Champion, Legendary, and then Homework. The nice thing about both the music and the audio, you can play both at the same time, which again provides additional feedback for the learner themselves. Sarah or Greg, is there anything else that you want to mention about the Learn page? Silence is heard. The next page that we're going to look at is the translate page. This is where a student, I do have my Perkins right next to us, right next to me, where if the student is typing in Braille, it will transcribe immediately. And that's where they mentioned you can download and you can copy. One of the things to remember is that the student needs to, or the individual needs to push down the space bar in order to completely transcribe what they are working on. Sarah or Greg, anything about the translate page?
I think that's everything. You've covered it really well.
Okay. And the last page we want to point out is the homework page, which is down here, which is super fun. You can create new homework for your individual learner. You can print the question and they can practice it below. Again, and on all of the other pages, you can choose the different languages as well as grade 1 and grade 2, which is phenomenal. I absolutely love that feature. Any other thoughts from Greg or Sarah on the homework page?
We do have some questions in the chat, and one in
Okay.
particular I think Greg's going to get a kick out of. Does it translate Nimeth?
So we don't support Nimeth at the moment. There is some support for basic UEB math at the moment with the translate tool. The thing to mention is that it will work with APH's software, which is UEB Math Tutorial and UEB Nemeth Tutorial, because they support 6 key entry. Yeah, and you can obviously download it as a BRF and things like that. But yeah, the math support for the translate tool is just limited to basic UEB at the moment.
Great question.
So Stephanie asks, is there an added cost to have an account? So the accounts on the page for our website are free, so anyone can make it. You can actually, as long as you have a QWERTY keyboard, which is a traditional style keyboard that supports 6 key entry, you can do all the activities on the page Braille to test it out, even if you don't have a Paige Connect. So you can see how you would like the site and kind of what you would want to do without even having the device. There's been a couple questions about durability. So I still have my document camera up. So if you look and if you can feel the material, which I know you all can't right now, but it really feels like a metal. Y'all probably can't hear me pinging that at all, but it also has like kind of a metal sound when you ping it. It's not a metal, but it behaves a lot like a metal. So it's actually a composite material, but it's very stiff and durable.
I was gonna say, I have mine. I don't know if it's gonna work with the, it's probably not gonna work with the background, but I've got mine under it. And it does tuck a little bit underneath the Perkins Brailler, or a traditional Braille writer. So I mean, it's not added depth or anything.
So Lacey had a great question. Are these lessons intended for sighted persons trying to learn Braille or for Braille readers?
Very much Braille readers would have said. Sorry, Melissa.
No, go ahead, Greg.
I was going to say like very much Braille readers primarily. So the niche we see this filling is that you get the tactile output from the Brailler as well as the audio feedback and the visual output. So it's supposed to sort of blend all of them together. So we were kind of gearing it towards, but I mean, sighted people could also get use out of it, but it does give the tactile Braille output and then encourages you to read it back by touch as well to practice touch reading.
So the other thing to kind of keep in mind, and I'll let you answer, Melissa, as well, I think you have something you're about to say, is as long as you don't have the Perkins like plugged in or anything, or even if you do have it plugged in, you can use it 100% like your traditional Braille writer. So even if this is installed, if you don't want to use all the attachments, I mean, just don't plug it in. You would want to still have the paper in the Brailler like normal so that you can read what you're outputting. But it doesn't impede any of the functions of the original Braille writer. Go ahead, Melissa. You look like you're going to say something.
Absolutely. And I was going to say, I honestly can see it for so many people. Cited, again, I know Braille, but some of the contractions and stuff I've needed to go back and refresh my Braille knowledge. So I've gone through and done some of the lessons beyond the basics, as well as if I were teaching my daughter, she could use it and she could read the Braille as somebody who needs the tactile piece of it. So I think it really is sky's the limit on who wants to learn using the site.
And I know that today's presentation is kind of more high level because for a lot of people, this is your first introduction. One thing that we did find when we were doing field testing, a lot of people really appreciated that while their student or their family member is using this, they could instantly see on the screen what was being brailled. So they could provide more immediate feedback on spelling or answer questions, even if they don't know the Braille directly. So that was a really cool feedback that we got with that.
Absolutely.
There's a couple questions about, does it work with the electric brailer? Was waiting to see if Greg would say anything. I believe from what I last heard is that has also one that's not been tested, but we are looking to test that as well. Oh, and we also had a question. I can't read their full name, but they were asking, can this product, quote unquote, press keys on the brailer, acting as an embosser of sorts, or does the user press keys and have work translated? I hope this makes sense. So I will start and then I'll let Greg add in from here. So the whole Paige Connect is the board that goes underneath the keys. There's nothing besides for where like the screws are connected that's physically touching your brailer. So one, that's great because you're not going to have extra wear and tear on any of the internals. But that does mean that all of the operation of the brailer is still with your finger strength and finger power. It's not changed any of that. So won't work as an embosser, but does a lot of other cool things. Anything to add to that, Greg?
I think that's a really good summary. I think it's effectively just turning your Perkins into a Bluetooth keyboard, really, is the simplest explanation for it.
And Peter had a question. Can I save the BRF rather than the translated text? I'm thinking of Braille, music, and maps.
Yeah, absolutely. So on the download button below the Braille panel, and that will download as BRF, and then the one below the print panel will download as a Word document.
So Diane had a question. Is this mainly for students learning Braille or for students who already know Braille? I'm thinking about an aide who doesn't know Braille. So we haven't touched on this, but another really good resource you might want to look into. At APH, we have another free website called Braille Brain. It's completely free. It does support 6-key entry, so you can use your Paige Connect with it if you want, or you can do it just on your QWERTY keyboard. Braille Brain itself is more designed for learners who already have literacy skills. So that could be an adult going back to learn Braille, or like in your instance, you're saying an aide that doesn't know Braille to learn Braille. So that would be a cool resource for them. Of course, they can also do everything on the Paige Braille as well, but that would probably be another good resource to look at. Speaking about music, one thing that we haven't touched on, and I don't know if Melissa, Greg, you want to mention it all, there is the music section. It's not Braille music, so I don't want to get everyone excited, but it's basically like a way for kids to play around with the keys to create different sounds to kind of encourage the interaction with the device. And that's a whole section on Paige Braille. It can be turned on and off, depending on what you want.
Let's see. I know there was a question because it demonstrated on the video, but what does the voice sound like? And I think it was kind of also in, there was another question about what happens when something is typed incorrectly. So Sarah, if you're okay, I have my Paige Connect and I can open up like a learner. I can share my screen and I'll do like one of the learn lessons.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
So while you're getting that set up, I will answer one other question that came in. Lacey was asking, can we order 2 per student? Because they were thinking maybe one for classroom use and one for home use. That is kind of up between you and whoever spends your quota money, because I know each state handles things a little bit differently, but the page itself is available on quota.
Absolutely. So I am currently, is my screen shared?
Yes, your screen is shared.
Perfect.
I'm looking at Rookie on the Paige Braille site currently.
Perfect. So I'm on the Rookie, and I will toggle the music to be on. I will state one of the things, because I was really eager to get my hands in playing on this. Really make sure that you do have a piece of paper in there, because in order to read, you need to go back to what was actually typed to read that. One of the things that I thought about, if I had a student very early learning, that I would type out exactly what the lesson had. That way they had a clean Braille sheet to go from, rather than any errors that they may have made during learning. So if I click right.
And would
So
you mind turning the voice on real quick? At the top there, it's also a toggle.
Yep. Oh, I went back. Sorry. Yep.
It's on the top of each page. So this is not a screen reader, just a caveat. But it is something that can be toggled on and off to give the voice output for people who may not be comfortable using a screen reader. So maybe your family members at home or whatnot. So it is an option.
Absolutely. So if we click right, we're going to learn level 1 ALDNT.
Practice embossing Braille. Press space to get started.
So I'm going to press the space bar.
Keep going. L is dots 1, 2, 3.
I'm going to press 1, 2, and 3 together. Oh, I made a mistake. Oh no, that was correct, wasn't it? Hold on.
You should be able to backspace, Melissa.
Thank you.
There we go.
Excellent. That is dot 1.
That would be to push the space bar reminder.
Correct. That is dot 1. Correct. A. Nice. T is dots 2, 3, 4, 5. Correct. T.
So if you start with the incorrect, can you show what that looks like?
Keep going. D is dots 1, 4, 5. Not quite. D is dots 1, 4, 5. Not quite. D is dots 1, 4, 5. Keep going. D.
So as your student or your individual is typing all of those errors, when we get to the read part, they're going to have to try to finagle and figure out which letters were correct. So that's where, as a TVI or a teacher or a parent, you may want to type out exactly what they're supposed to read back, because when they do the read, they'll have to put in exactly what the order they're giving. It'll say what was the first letter, what was the second letter, what was the third letter. Were there any questions on this part before I exit my screen or click out of this one?
There's a quick thing to mention, which is there's some like fun sound effects that don't get picked up in the screen sharing, but you can try them out on the website.
I thought for sure the sounds were coming through.
The voice was, the music part was not. But again, both the voice and music you can toggle on and off, so that's totally up to your own preference. Greg, here's a good question for you from Michael, asking about Google Docs and using 6-key entry if that. Has Paige been tested with that?
I had no idea it had that, so that's something to try out. I know that iOS, buried far, far, far in the settings, now has support for 6-key entry as well. So there's more and more things adding support for 6-key entry. So as long as it's SDFJKL keys, Paige Connect should work with it.
So that is kind of an important caveat to make. One thing that when I've been demonstrating to people in person, the Paige Connect, that sometimes people get a little bit confused about is they connect it to their phone, but then they try to open up like their text messages and everything, and they're not in 6-key entry, and they're like, whatever I'm typing is just coming completely wrong. So you just have to make sure whatever program you're trying to use it with does support the 6-key entry. But from there, you're good to go. Peter had a question. what if you get them to rub out the mistakes rather than just pressing backspace?
So currently the way it works is that it's picking up the 9 keys. So it will pick up your new line, your backspace, your space, just like any other keyboard. And so we do encourage people to use the backspace if they do want to delete things. But yeah.
And Greg, here's another question for you. Again, I can't read their whole name, but they're asking, what inspired you to build this device?
It's quite a long story, so I'll give you the more short version. So originally we were doing like a way more ambitious project, and so we kind of slaved away on this really tough project. And everyone we had spoken to who was using Braille had all learned on the Perkins, and so we realised that we could kind of snap off part of what we'd built and click it onto the Perkins. And there'd been similar products we'd seen back in like the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, and so we built this prototype in like a month and then showed it to some TVIs, like I mentioned, and they were kind of biting our arms off for it immediately. Because at least in the UK, and I think the same is true in the US, a lot of blind students are taught in mainstream settings where a lot of people don't know Braille. And so it's kind of, they can be a bit isolated. And so people immediately kind of saw the use for it. And they were currently like manually transcribing things with a pen as well, which was kind of slowing things down for the teacher to mark it. And so that was at the time just a translate feature, and they immediately wanted like 10 of them. And so then we've gone on to build out all of the Learn software and things. And the thing to mention is we're all continually building this as well. So if you request features, we will build them basically. And so just let us know what you want, and we can like build around what you actually want us to build.
And I will state that's a perfect segue to this next slide, unless Sarah, there's another question or comment.
Go ahead, Melissa.
Perfect. So Paige Braille and Paige Connect, the impact for your learner. I think there's a lot of conversation and things that we're already picking up on and how this will impact students at home, for parents and family members who aren't familiar with Braille. How easy and convenient is it going to be to plug this in and use it on your smart device or your computer to help your student learn their spelling, write stories, as an individual themselves wanting to learn Braille as another support at home and at school. I think there was already some conversations about your classroom teacher who is working with a student who is proficient in Braille or using it, and you plug this into their smart device. And as a teacher, you can see in real time exactly what they're writing and transcribing. With the download button, being able to download that and send it off and save that copy is also going to be incredibly time saving for TVI's, general education teachers, and paraprofessionals who work with students. I can personally see at Voc Rehab this also being a great way for adults to kind of bridge that traditional Braille writer to the digital. And while it's not a screen reader, it is a start to hearing that voice or hearing that feedback. And I'll ask Sarah and Greg if there were anything from field testing or any feedback that you want to share personally that you heard from the folks.
This is Sarah. I will add in first, and then I'll let Greg if he wants to add anything. One thing that was kind of impressive to me with field testing was the potential impact, I should say, on students who are dual media learners. There was one tester in particular that worked with a student, and she was saying in the month that they were using it with the student, and they were like upper elementary, they had learned more Braille than they had in the previous couple of years, because the student before that was just very unmotivated to use Braille, just wanted to use print, and they were just very excited with the technology aspect of the Paige Connect, and that got them a lot more connected to the device, and that was the buy-in to like, oh, if you like use this device, then like, you know, you'll be working on your Braille. So that kind of buy-in aspect was really exciting for me.
And I can throw in, as I was learning things and just listening to the sounds, I know you couldn't hear them. It does, again, kind of gamify and bring the traditional Braille writer into the gaming world of today's learners. Greg, was there anything else that you heard besides all of the TVIs wanting 15 of them now?
I think one of the things that was kind of heartwarming is we focused on schools initially. So we'd done a lot of testing in the UK in school settings and things, but it was nice to see some kids also using it with family and friends and things like that. So it actually kind of broadening who they could sort of learn Braille alongside, which is something we'd always hoped would happen, but it was kind of nice actually hearing the testimonials and things like that.
Absolutely.
We had a couple of questions come in. Beth was asking about like, do we download? Can't find it on the website. So Paige Braille itself is a traditional website. You don't have to download anything. So as long as you can get onto a internet browser, then you're able to get onto the Paige Braille website. So there's nothing to download with that. So the advantage of that is it works with any operating system essentially.
And that
to go
was
along with, oh yes, go ahead, Greg. Sorry.
just going to say that was a sort of deliberate choice we made because we found with a lot of products, people were having a really steep learning curve where they'd have to learn how to use a whole new device. So part of the reasoning behind doing a web app is people can keep using the like screen reader and device they're already comfortable with. So we wanted to just make it as easy as possible to get started, really.
And speaking of screen readers, that's a good segue into Ting's question. Has the site been tested with different screen readers for TVIs and paras who are blind? It has been fully tested. That being said, if you do come across a quirk, please do let us know. Things can happen. But yes, we had several testers and even the initial testers at APH that were blind themselves and screen reader users that did test it out.
Anything else before I click the last few slides?
This would be a question for Greg. Are there plans to make this website without a connection to the internet being required to access it?
So currently we're focused on building out the web app as best as we can. I think long term, we'd always be interested in doing potentially like iOS or Android apps, but it's not on the like immediate horizon. So we're just trying to make the experience as good as we can for everyone, and keep building features into the learning and translate tool and things like that as people request them. But I'm not ruling it out. It's just I can't make any promises.
Peter had a good question where you're like freehanding Braille in. He's asking, you mentioned basic UEB math support. If a student was learning addition with spatial layout, would that be shown correctly in the text areas, like units lining up in the appropriate columns?
I think the kind of simplest answer for this one is to give it a go, because you can test it out with your QWERTY keyboard with the STFJKL keys. So you can just see if it's capable of doing what you want it to do. This is kind of a problem not unique to Paige. There isn't a lot of really good Braille to math translation out there. So we are keeping like a watchful eye on all of the different open source efforts that are happening to try and improve that. And as soon as one comes out, we're really keen to integrate it into the tool. But for now, I just suggest that you give it a go and see how it copes with what you want to do.
Oh, here's a question for you, Melissa, from Sherry. Melissa's asking, sorry, not Melissa, Sherry's asking Melissa. I'm not quite clear what you mean when you say to type the letters without errors for accurate reading. When you say type, do you mean to braille those correctly onto paper? Or do you mean to type them into the QWERTY keyboard? It's a little confusing.
I apologize for that.
Great question.
Yes, very good question. So yes, to Braille, sorry, and I had my Perkins right next to me. So when I was brailing the letters, if I were to make the mistakes and the errors that I was making, then when I, as an individual who's trying to read that to type back into the website on my keyboard, it wouldn't work. No, I'm sorry. When I read them, in order to braille them back on my Perkins, it would be much harder because of the errors. So as a TVI, in the order that you were learning them on the website, so if it was LSAD, as the teacher, I would type up LASD. And so as the student was brailing them and making the mistakes, they had a clean sheet that was going to go in the same order, because when you, as they're asking you to read it, they would say letter 1, and then you could read the correct without any errors L, and then braille L into the website. Did that come across clear, Sarah or Greg, or did I totally botch that?
So just to, go ahead, Greg.
I was just going to back up a little bit and sort of explain the different activities we have in Learn. So the way it works is we start off with like a write activity that is telling you what keys to press on your brailler to emboss the Braille. So if it's an A, it will say hit .1 and then it will say correct. And then what we do is we get you to learn like a handful of letters. So on level 1, it will introduce A, L, D, T, and then it will get you to press the right keys for those letters. And then the next activity is called a read activity. So we get you to start a new line, feel above the cursor and feel the Braille letters that you've just embossed. And then you can practice touch reading and copying them out. And so that's just to encourage you to try and kind of practice touch reading. So what Melissa's suggesting is that if you've got a student who's making tons of errors with the right activity, that it might be best just to write it out for them first, to then let them have a hard copy, like the hard copy Braille to copy out. The idea behind this was so that you can sort of generate your hard copy Braille on the fly. You don't have to order tons and tons of Braille in the post and then use those hard copy resources to practice touch reading. So this is just, yeah, and you're perfectly welcome to like skip the read activities if you just want to practice writing.
So just to add on to clarify, as far as like what you're using to enter onto the website, it's whatever device you have connected. So if you're just using your QWERTY keyboard, then you would be using the SDF/JKL keys. Or if you have your Paige Connect connected, then you would be physically brailing on the brailler for input. So Carlton had a question for math. Can it be used with the JAWS Braille math editor? Any comments, Greg?
I think I'm going to do my original. If it's 6-key entry, then it should work. But there's so much stuff, and this was part of the reason we did it. There's so many things that take 6-key entry. So we're hoping people do try them out and let us know. We're going to start trying to build out some more resources, kind of showing people how to use it with third-party software. But as everyone's discussing in the chat, there's actually a lot out there. So we've got like UEB Online, there's Braille Brain, UEB Math Tutorial, NEMA Tutorial. I think Duxbury does 6-key entry as well. So there's loads of third-party software that it should work with. And yeah, we are going to try and release some videos and things doing walkthroughs with third-party software.
Was there anything else, Sarah?
I was trying to scroll up. I feel like we
you're
missed
okay.
a couple. One person was asking about availability, where it's currently available. Currently available through APH in the US. More to stay tuned. I know through the Paige Braille website that covers England, Great Britain, but definitely the availability will be expanding for sure. Another question came up: how frequently will Paige Connect devices firmware be updated? So I'll let Greg answer this here in a moment. I think it is good to note that the Paige Connect, it really is good to think of it as a keyboard. There isn't, like, it doesn't have like an internal brain or anything. There's no built-in speakers, there's no built-in logic board. So all of the Braille translation and sound is coming from the device you have connected with it. So there's not really like firmware per se to go with it, like a refreshable Braille display or something that would have different software. Now, that being said, the website is continuously being updated, like Greg was saying. And if you have comments, I mean, we can't build everything under the sun, but we can definitely build a lot of things. So, anything to add, Greg?
Yeah, just to encourage people do request features, because one of the requests that came out of the field testing was to add integrated text-to-speech for people who want confident screen reader users, and that has now been added. So we will like listen to people's feedback and add features as they request them.
I think that's one of the main things that we missed. If you had a question that I missed, please feel free to write it again. But I think we've covered the main questions.
Sarah, I did just put the website APH and the catalog number and the cost for Paige Connect and a photo of the Paige Connect itself and the guide and the box itself. We have heard from some TVIs that they are storing the bottom of a Perkins Braille writer or traditional Braille writer bottom in the box and storing it and installing the Paige Connect before they are given to students to manage that piece.
Oh, that does remind me of a good point to make that I forgot. And this is slightly funny. So just kind of word of advice, Page Connect is very sturdy. It's not indestructible. The weak point when traveling, if you have the board not in the box or installed on the Page Connect. So let's say you just shove it in your backpack, like we had an employee here at APH do. No one on call here. And so they were traveling with it that way and being shoved in the backpack. Some of the U-shaped sensors got like off kilter or slightly misshapen. So that is kind of a word of warning. If you're going to travel with it and it's not in your Perkins Brailler, you need to have it in some type of box or something so there's not direct pressure like sideways onto your optical sensors, the U-shaped optical sensors. So learn from our mistakes. Lee had a question. Is it possible to connect teachers' accounts to students' accounts? How does the teacher track the students' progress?
So this is Melissa, and my first thinking is I know in our school district, all of our kids have email with tied to the district. And while it might be one more thing for you to track or just keep track of, but each student using their email and then just creating a password for them, very simple, because you can have multiple accounts and you just can kind of oversee them per se, or ask a parent, and that might be another thing, to use a parent to have a login at home or something of that nature. I don't know if Sarah or Greg, if you have different ideas.
Yeah, I think at the moment the account's very simple. It's just email, password, and then you've got a dashboard that summarizes all of your progress through the different activities, what day the student was active, how much time they've spent, and yeah, things like that.
And so some of that will kind of come down to individual districts have different policies based on data privacy, plus data privacy laws are always constantly changing. So some of that will kind of be up to your district. I believe we had one field tester that the teacher kind of made quote unquote like dummy accounts for each student. So they were in charge of the accounts, but then they had a different login for each student. So might be something for us to look into to have connected accounts, and we can definitely put that on the list to think about.
Were there any other questions before we go to our poll question? And we can leave it open for any other questions. So I don't know if Amanda saw and if the poll if she will pop up, but after today's session, what is the first thing you're most likely to do? Are you going to brag to a colleague or a family member about a cool new tool you learned about? Or maybe you're going to tell everybody how you listen to Greg's amazing accent. Go down a rabbit hole of Paige Braille's website. Goodbye, free time. Bust out some lesson plans and figure out where Paige Connect fits in. Or take a break, a snack break, and let it all sink in. Action can wait just a little while.
And we'll let that run for just a minute, and then I'll go over some of the results with you guys.
And I can stop sharing my screen.
Alrighty, I'm gonna stop the poll right now. So again, it was after today's session. What's the first thing that you're most likely to do? And about 48% of people said that they would brag to a colleague or family member about a cool new tool that you learned about. About 35% said that they'd go down that rabbit hole of Page Braille website. So they are saying goodbye to their free time. And then we also had 6% who said that they'd bust out some lessons plans and figure out where Page Braille or Page Connect fits in. And then, of course, we had about 10% say that they'd take a snack break and let it all sink in. Action can wait just a little while. So that is our poll results.
So this is Sarah again. Thank you all for being here. Just want to kind of reiterate, if you do have ideas for things you'd like to see with the Paige Connect, please do let us know. If you need troubleshooting, call our customer service or contact. But thank you all for being here and excited to see what's coming next.
Alrighty, everybody. Well, thank you so much for joining our webinar today, our partner showcase. We hope that you learned something new, and of course, we enjoyed having you with us. If you want to view more partner showcases, there is a APH newsletter that you can sign up for to be able to see more. And then, of course, they did say that they will be hosting a Hive course later on, I believe this month, right?
I think it's actually in September. I want to say it's around the 23rd, but I didn't want to officially say that date and then be wrong. So around the 20th.
About 1 month out.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that will have the ACV REP credit.
Awesome. So go to the Hive and sign up for that course, of course. And of course, next time we are excited to have you on our Partner Showcase webinar. And you guys have a good day. Thank you to our presenters, and we will see you guys soon.
Thank you.
Bye.